Hey, coffee girl. Snap, snap. I looked up from my laptop. The conference room went silent. Everyone turned toward me like I'd interrupted something sacred. I was holding the quarterly growth report. My report. The one I'd spent 7 weeks building from scratch, analyzing market trends until my eyes burned at 3 in the morning. The same report Preston was now presenting as his own brilliant strategy. Can we get some fresh coffee in here? He said, grinning. This presentation's going to run long, and I need everyone sharp. The room laughed, not because it was funny, because Preston was the golden boy, and laughing at his jokes was how you stayed in his good graces. I met his eyes. His smile had teeth in it. Dismissal. Ownership. The kind of arrogance that comes from never being questioned. As if I hadn't built every single slide he was clicking through. Sure thing, I said, smiling like I was too naive to understand the insult. I walked out while they applauded his genius. My name is Tessa Carmichael. I'm 28 years old with an MBA from Wharton, and everyone here thinks I'm just the helpful girl who fetches lattes. They have no idea I own 30% of this company. Preston just made the most expensive coffee request of his life. The first time Preston dismissed me wasn't mean. It was casual, which somehow made it worse. I need someone detail-oriented to keep things organized, he'd said 6 months ago, handing me a stack of folders like he was doing me a favor. You're really good at the small stuff. He smiled when he said it. Warm, encouraging, the kind of compliment designed to sound supportive while quietly putting you in your place. I just finished a 14-page analysis on cost reduction strategies that could save the company $6 million annually. But sure, I'll organize your files. That was the moment I realized Preston saw me as furniture. Useful, forgettable, something that stayed in the background while he took center stage. I watched him present my cost analysis to the executive team 2 weeks later. He changed 3 words and called it his breakthrough thinking. When I mentioned it afterward, he looked confused. Did you send that to me? I thought it came from the research team. He shrugged. Either way, great collaboration. That's what teamwork means. I smiled and said nothing, but I started keeping records. Wait, you're not related to the Carmichael family, right? Stella from Human Resources asked me this during my 2nd week. She was looking at my employee file with curious eyes. I shook my head. No relation. Technically true. I'd legally changed my last name when I joined the company. My father's idea, though, I'd agreed. Start at the bottom, he'd said over breakfast the morning before my first day. Let them judge your work, not your inheritance. Prove yourself first. What neither of us expected was that they wouldn't judge my work at all. They'd just assume I didn't do any. My father, Warren Carmichael, co-founded Meridian Solutions 12 years ago with his college roommate. When they brought in investors and restructured, I received founding equity through a private trust. 30% ownership. Fully vested. Hidden behind legal structures until I chose to reveal it. I wanted to earn respect on my own merit. Instead, I became invisible. Preston started repeating my ideas in meetings. Word for word sometimes, though usually he'd add some sports metaphor to make it sound more executive. We need to pivot our client retention strategy, I'd say during morning prep sessions. 3 hours later in the boardroom. Folks, we need to pivot our client retention strategy. Think of it like adjusting your defense mid-game. Everyone would nod like he'd discovered fire. When I finally brought it up, he blinked at me with practiced confusion. I don't think you said that in the actual meeting. Maybe during prep? He tilted his head sympathetically. Listen, it's easy to misremember things when you're taking notes. Don't stress about it. Taking notes. As if that was my primary function. You're a great support person, Tessa, he added. Really valuable to have in the room. Support person. Like a lamp. Or a couch. I felt my face get hot, but I kept my expression neutral. That night, I started documenting everything. Every email. Every draft with timestamps. Every original whiteboard sketch. Photographed and dated. I wasn't planning revenge yet, but I could feel it forming. I stepped into the elevator with Gregory, our chief financial officer. We'd been in the same meetings dozens of times, but he looked at my badge like he was reading it for the first time. He turned back to his phone without saying anything. When the doors opened on the executive floor, he stepped out and turned to someone waiting in the lobby. "Your assistant's here," he said with a chuckle. Guess we're covered on coffee. I hadn't spoken a single word. The elevator doors closed, and I stared at my reflection in the metal. Same reflection I'd seen my whole life. But apparently here at Meridian, I was just a blurry background figure. I thought about my father's advice. Prove yourself first. But how do you prove yourself when no one's looking? That afternoon, I started a new folder on my laptop. I labeled it documentation. Inside, I began collecting evidence, not just of Preston's theft, but of every dismissal, every stolen idea, every casual insult disguised as friendliness. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I'd need it eventually. My market analysis ended up in a client pitch. I found out through a Slack message thread I wasn't included in. Absolutely crushed that presentation, Preston. That consumer trend breakdown was genius. Preston responded with a flame emoji and team effort, but thanks. I messaged him privately. Was that the retail analysis from last month? His reply came fast. Don't overthink it. Everyone contributes pieces. It's not about individual credit. It's about wins for the company. I stared at that message for 10 minutes. Not about individual credit. Unless you were Preston, apparently. Then every win had your name on it. I opened my documentation folder and added the Slack screenshots. Then I pulled up the original analysis file, verified the creation date and author name, and added that too. The folder was getting thick. Board members flew in for quarterly reviews. The real power players. The people who actually made decisions. I watched Preston hold court at an expensive steakhouse downtown, telling stories about his team, like we were props in his success story. He raised his wine glass during dessert, to the people who keep the machine running, and to the leaders who built the machine. Everyone laughed and clinked glasses. Everyone except me, and everyone except Margot Lennox. She sat at the far end of the table, observing quietly. She was married to the CEO, but had her own venture capital firm. She was also my silent godmother, though no one at Meridian knew that. Our eyes met across the room. She didn't laugh either. Margot found me 3 days later in the hallway outside the women's restroom. "I know who you are," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure we were alone. "And you've been far more patient than I would have been." I nodded slowly. I wanted to do it the right way. There's doing it the right way, and then there's letting people walk on you. She adjusted her pearl necklace. "You're smarter than this, Tessa. You know exactly what you need to do. I don't want to be vindictive." "Then don't be vindictive. Be strategic." She started walking away, then paused. "Just make sure when you move, it's decisive. Half measures only make things worse." She disappeared around the corner, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That night, I pulled out the safe from my apartment closet. Inside was a leather folder labeled TC, Equity Documentation, 30% ownership, founding shareholder status, stock certificates, legal agreements, everything validated and notarized. I'd been sitting on this for 6 months, trying to earn respect without using it. But respect wasn't coming. Only dismissal. Only theft. Only Preston's smug grin every time he claimed my work as his. I closed the folder and put it back in the safe. But now I knew. I wouldn't wait much longer. Preston made a mistake. He'd copied my financial projection model for the third quarter, but he'd changed one number. Just one. He'd moved a decimal point in the expense column, turning a $140,000 cost into $1,400,000. I watched him present it to the investment committee with complete confidence, his voice steady, his gestures polished. Nobody caught it during the meeting, but I did. Afterward, I accidentally forwarded the correct version to Gregory, the CFO, with a subject line that read, "FYI, notice some discrepancies in the Q3 model." No explanation, no accusation, just helpful Tessa, catching a small mistake. Gregory didn't reply, but the next morning, Preston looked rattled. His usual swagger was gone. He kept glancing at his phone, his jaw tight. I smiled at him in the break room. "Everything okay?" "Fine," he muttered, not making eye contact. I poured my coffee slowly. "Let me know if you need anything. I'm always happy to help." He left without responding. I overheard him 2 days later in the glass conference room. He thought the door was closed, but it hadn't latched properly. VP by next quarter, he was telling someone on speakerphone. The board loves me. I've basically got this locked down. He laughed, that sharp, confident sound that made my stomach turn. Yeah, man. Once I'm VP, I'm restructuring, getting rid of dead weight, bringing in people who actually produce. Dead weight. He meant people like me. People he thought were just assistants taking up space. I stepped back from the door and walked to the printer, making sure he didn't see me. But I'd heard enough. Margot handed me a manila folder during lunch the following week. We met at a quiet cafe 3 blocks from the office. What's this? I asked. Preston's background. She sipped her tea. His resume has some creative edits. His MBA program? Never finished. That marketing award he mentions? Doesn't exist. And there's a lawsuit from his previous company. Settled quietly. I opened the folder. Everything was documented. Transcripts, legal filings, a settlement agreement with a non-disclosure clause. How did you get this? She smiled. I know people who know people. The question is, what are you going to do with it? I closed the folder carefully. I'm not sure yet. Well, decide soon. Men like Preston don't stop. They escalate. She was right. I knew she was right. I scheduled a quiet meeting with Gregory under the pretense of discussing budget projections. I've been working on a revised profit-loss model, I said, sliding a report across his desk. It identifies some inefficiencies we could fix. Could save us significant money. He scanned it, his eyebrows rising. This is solid work. Really solid. Who developed this? I did. Over the past few weeks. He looked at me differently then. Not like the coffee girl. Like someone who actually understood the business. Can I implement this? Of course. That's why I brought it to you. He nodded slowly. You know, Tessa, you're sharper than people give you credit for. I smiled. I know. At the next quarterly meeting, the CEO praised Preston's team for the recent efficiency improvements. Gregory interrupted. Actually, I'd like to recognize Tessa. She identified the model. Quiet asset in the room, but invaluable. The room turned toward me. I felt a dozen pairs of eyes, some confused, some curious. Preston laughed too loud. Oh yeah, Tessa's great with the back-end stuff. Real team player. But his voice had an edge now. Uncertainty. The CEO nodded. Good to know. We should leverage that more. After the meeting, Preston cornered me by the elevators. What are you doing? He asked quietly. My job, I said simply. His jaw tightened. Don't try to make this into something it's not. I'm not trying to make it anything. I'm just working. The elevator arrived, and I stepped inside, leaving him standing there, watching me with something that looked like concern. Preston tried to smooth things over the next morning. Hey, he said, leaning against my cubicle with forced casualness. I just want to say if I ever made you feel overlooked, that wasn't intentional. You're great at all the behind-the-scenes stuff. Thanks, I said, keeping my smile perfectly neutral. I appreciate that. We're a team, right? Absolutely. He looked relieved. Good. I'm glad we're on the same page. After he walked away, I turned back to my computer and opened my documentation folder. I added a note. Preston attempted reconciliation. Insincere. The folder now contained 47 documents, emails, screenshots, recorded meetings, financial models with creation dates and metadata. Everything I needed. Another boardroom. Another meeting. Another coffee order. Hey, Tessa, can you grab some coffee for everyone? Preston said, not looking up from his phone. But this time, I wasn't holding a notepad. I was holding a flash drive. Actually, I said calmly, I think you'll want to see this first. I walked to the front of the room and plugged the drive into the presentation laptop. Preston's face shifted from confusion to concern. What are you doing? Presenting, I said simply. The screen lit up. Slide 1. Ownership structure. Meridian Solutions. Slide 2. Tessa Carmichael. 30% shareholder. Founding equity. The room went completely silent. Preston stood up. This is some kind of joke, right? It's public record, I said. You just never bothered to check. The CEO, Mr. Dennison, cleared his throat. Tessa, is this accurate? Completely. I can provide all documentation, legal agreements, stock certificates, everything properly filed and notarized. I clicked to the next slide. Timeline of contribution versus credit. The screen filled with side-by-side comparisons. My original documents on the left. Preston's presentations on the right. Dates, timestamps, metadata all proving he'd taken my work. Preston's face went pale. This is taken out of context. The context is that you've been claiming my work as yours for 6 months. My voice stayed level. Calm. Every strategy you've presented came from me. Every financial model. Every market analysis. Margot spoke from the back of the room. I think we need to have a private board discussion. Mr. Dennison nodded. Agreed. Preston, Tessa, please step outside. We stood in the hallway. Preston wouldn't look at me. You're making a huge mistake, he finally said. No, you made the mistake. I'm just correcting it. You really think they'll side with you? You've been here 6 months. I've been a shareholder for 12 years. I think they'll side with the equity. The boardroom door opened. Mr. Dennison gestured for us to return. Inside, the energy had shifted. The board members looked serious, formal. After reviewing the documentation, Mr. Dennison said, the board has decided on immediate action. Preston, effective immediately. You're being placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Preston's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Tessa, we'd like to discuss your role here moving forward. Clearly, you've been underutilized. Within a week, everything changed. Preston's office was cleared out, his name removed from project files. An ethics committee was formed to review his conduct. My nameplate appeared on a new office, not a cubicle, an actual office with walls and a door. Director of Strategic Development. People stopped calling me sweetie. They stopped asking me to fetch things. They started scheduling meetings with me, asking for my input, actually listening when I spoke. I didn't have to raise my voice. I just had to reveal my position. Preston came by to clear out his desk on a Thursday afternoon. He moved quietly, efficiently, avoiding eye contact with everyone. I watched from my office doorway as he packed his awards and photos into a cardboard box. He saw me watching and paused. You happy now? He asked. I'm not happy. I'm just done being invisible. He shook his head. You could have just talked to me. I tried. You called me a support person and told me not to overthink things. He had no response to that. I watched him carry his box to the elevator. The doors closed and he was gone. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like I could finally breathe. Margot invited me to lunch the following week at the same quiet cafe. Well, she said, smiling over her menu. That was more dramatic than I expected. I tried to do it cleanly. You did it perfectly. Preston destroyed himself. You just provided the evidence. I sipped my water. Do you think I was too harsh? Do you think he would have shown you mercy if the roles were reversed? I thought about that. About every dismissal, every stolen idea, every condescending smile. No, I said finally. He wouldn't have. Then stop second-guessing yourself. You earned this. The board offered me a formal seat at the table, not just as a shareholder, but as an active executive voice. I accepted. My first board meeting felt surreal. Sitting where I could see everyone, where everyone could see me. Mr. Dennison opened with financials, then turned to me. Tessa, you mentioned some ideas about restructuring our client services division. Want to share those? I did. And this time, when I spoke, people took notes. Nobody interrupted. Nobody took credit. They just listened. We implemented my profit models over the next quarter, restructured leadership, promoted people based on actual merit instead of who told the best stories in meetings. The company grew 18%. Investors called it a remarkable turnaround. I called it what happens when you stop rewarding theft and start rewarding work. I still get coffee sometimes, but nobody asks me to anymore. They ask for my signature, my approval, my strategy. New employees sometimes mistake me for an assistant when they first see me. I'm young. I dress casually. I don't need to perform authority. But they learn quickly, usually within one meeting. Preston sent me an email 6 months after everything happened. Just 2 lines. I'm sorry for how I treated you. You deserve better. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to write back something cutting, something that would make him feel as small as he'd made me feel. But that wasn't who I was. I wrote back, "Thank you. I hope you learned something." Then I deleted the thread and moved on. I think about what my father said, about starting at the bottom and proving myself. He was right about one thing. I did prove myself, but not the way either of us expected. I didn't prove myself by quietly accepting disrespect until someone noticed my hard work. I proved myself by refusing to stay invisible. Preston taught me something valuable, even if he didn't mean to. If people underestimate you, document everything. Build your case carefully. Then when the moment comes, show them exactly who you are. Not with anger, not with drama, with facts, with evidence, with the power you had all along. I look around the boardroom now during meetings, at the people who once ignored me, who now hang on my every word. And I remember, respect isn't given freely. Sometimes you have to take it back. But when you do, make sure you've earned it. Because I didn't win by being loud. I won by being right. And when they finally looked up from their assumptions, I was already sitting at the head of the table.